Earlier, senior Labour Cabinet Minister Peter Kyle accused the Reform UK leader of being on the side of paedophiles like Jimmy Savile, as he defended the law that requires social media sites and search engines to prevent children accessing harmful content like pornography. Nigel Farage said that Mr Kyle's comments were below the belt.
We are opening, with this act, a door into a very dark place of state censorship of what we think, believe and say. I think it's one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation in a democracy that I've seen in my lifetime.
And a 3-minute silence has taken place to mark 1 year since the Southport stabbing attack. BB King, Elsie Stancombe and Alice da Silva Aguiar were murdered by Axel Rudder-Cabana at a Taylor Swift dance class in Southport on the 29th of July last year. He attempted to murder 8 others. Earlier, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said that the nation stood with the families of the 3 victims. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, and hello, good evening to each and every single one of you at home. How are you? Tonight we're with you till 7 o'clock. Alongside me I've got my panel, Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Zoe Grunwald, the journalist and broadcaster. Welcome back to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you both. And each and every single one of you are always welcome on Dewbs & Co. And you know the drill, you can join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. There are lots of things that we need to discuss tonight. The whole horrendous situation that's been going on in Gaza. There's been so much discussion now as to what, if anything, the UK should be doing when it comes to recognising the state of Palestine. Well, our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has issued a statement on that. Let's take a listen.
I've always said that we will recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a proper peace process at the moment of maximum impact for the two-state solution. With that solution now under threat, this is the moment to act. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the state of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire and commit to a long-term sustainable peace, reviving the prospect of a two-state solution. And this includes allowing the UN to restart the supply of aid and making clear that there will be no annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza.
Well, I can tell you, response to this is completely mixed. Alex Dean, what's your reaction?
What an absurd statement from our Prime Minister, who says, with a straight face, my message to Hamas is unchanged. Well, they haven't given up the hostages, and you've said, nevertheless, that you're going to give them a state. He claims that this is a contribution to the peace process. Well, it's not a contribution to the peace process. Well, first of all, because there isn't a state that you can recognise. But secondly, if there was one, it would be run by Hamas, which is a proscribed terrorist organisation. So the suggestion that it's on a par with its democratic neighbours or with members of the United Nations is a total absurdity. Any functioning organisation running the new state that he would seek to recognise is one that our government formally prescribes as a terrorist organisation. Some contribution to the peace process that would be.
Zoe?
Well, for me, it's that this statement barely makes sense. I mean, Keir Starmer says he wants a two-state solution, as do a number of MPs across the House in Parliament. Yet the conditions of recognising a Palestinian state rely on Israel's actions. This you know, the whole point of having your statehood recognised is so you have an inalienable right to self-determination. But if that is based on the actions of another state, it's contradictory.
That's fair.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's going to please anybody on either side.
You either have it or you don't.
You do, correct. Yeah. And if Israel... you know, if that is contingent on the actions of Israel, then there is no self-determination there. So it doesn't make sense. And I think there are many, many reasons why a Palestinian state needs to be recognised, not least because it will give Palestine access to those international bodies. It would be a step forward to diplomacy. It would be a step forward to them being able to access the ICC, UN agencies, and hopefully it would empower moderate Palestinian voices to help actually create a statehood that would work alongside Israel. But what we have now is something that it is contradictory. It doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help the plight of the Palestinian people. And I don't know if it will put pressure on Israel, but I don't think so.
There is a basic framework. It's amazing to me that Keir Starmer was a leading lawyer, given that he is now giving way to his pressure from his own party that means he's doing this, I think. And plenty of his MPs think they'll lose their seats if it goes just a bit more than John Ashworth did, and I'll lose my seat because enough people get upset about the Middle East. Because he's completely disregarding the law on this. There's a framework for recognising states in international law, the Montevideo criteria. And they are, firstly, you have a permanent population. Well, that's not clear at all. Is the West Bank in or out? So, that's completely unclear. Secondly, you have permanent borders, recognisable borders. That's absolutely unclear. The Palestinian state would claim Jerusalem for a start. So you can't give them that one. The third is that you have a government. Absolutely not. The only organisation that's a semblance of running things in that state that would be recognised as Hamas, unless you're going to say Israel's the government of the new Palestine. And the fourth is the ability to enter into diplomatic relations with other countries. Well, that may come after, but they certainly can't do it now. So on the four criteria for recognising a state, the state that Keir Starmer wants to recognise currently meets none of them. And he's a lawyer.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting is the timing of this and why Keir Starmer has done what many people will call a bit of an about-face on this one. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, you all know the pressure that the Labour Party will be feeling, perhaps, not just from Reform UK, but now also from this new party, your party, or the left side, or whatever it's going to be called, I don't know. Anyway, Jeremy Corbyn, he's put a tweet out and said, Palestinian statehood is not a bargaining chip. It is not a threat. It is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. Our demands on this shameful government remain the same. End all arms sales to Israel, impose widespread sanctions and stop the genocide now.
But that's why it's stupid to do what he's done, because you can't out-Corbyn. He's never going to outbid Corbyn on doing more on this stuff. He's got to show that he's the moderate centrist. Who prefers the ersatz to the real? He can't outbid a party that's already outside mainstream politics on this.
But, I mean, Palestinian statehood isn't just something that's wanted by those on the left. There are, the scenes that have been coming out of Gaza have been absolutely horrendous for a long, long time. But over the past few weeks, it really feels like pressure has ramped up on Israel. And across the House, across the political spectrum, you are seeing people say, this is intolerable. We need a diplomatic solution. We need a ceasefire, and we need Netanyahu to stop his bombardment, his collective punishment of people in Gaza. And I think recognising a Palestinian state is a step towards that. It is saying to Israel, Palestine deserves a right to self-determination. The people deserve to have a government in there. Now, of course, Hamas is the sticking point here. But by giving Palestine access to these UN agencies, access to things like the ICC, you get a step closer to giving them a government that will recognise them as people in a democracy.
Who do you think turns up on day one at one of those international forums? It's a Hamas spokesman, right? And let's just... You were very generous, I think, in saying it's a sticking point. The Hamas attack on the 7th of October 2023 was the biggest loss of Jewish life in the world since the Holocaust, right? They raped their victims, they murdered pregnant women, they murdered people in their 90s, they kidnapped people and held them hostage. Of course, Keir Starmer says he demands the return of the hostages, but you haven't done it, but I'll still give you a state, or recognise a statehood. Extraordinary. Those are the people, their leadership rejoiced in the suffering on the 7th of October and said they would kill Jews again and again until they'd wiped out the Zionist entity. That's who Keir Starmer wants to give statehood. as someone who Keir Starmer wants to reward with statehood. Hamas puts command posts under hospitals. They weaponise food in their own population. They deliberately put children and civilians in the way of harm and then rejoice in that harm and video it for consumption internationally thereafter to capitalise on it. That's who Keir Starmer wants to reward with statehood. And it would be worse if it would actually mean anything. But the ultimate punchline is recognition isn't going to mean a thing.
But everything you've just said there is true. We've all seen the horrors of October the 7th. It is one of the most barbaric things imaginable. And, of course, as you suggest, still hostages to this day remain. But, you know, despite all of that, the fact of the matter is, as Zoe has just suggested, we are now in some form of information war. And the images that are coming out of this situation, they are not looking good for Israel. They are not. And one of the challenges is trying to unpick what is Hamas propaganda and what is actual reality. And the fact that Israel can have had all of that horrendous stuff happen to them and now be in the position where they are now looking like the bad guys is astonishing. And actually, if Israel had allowed international independent journalists into Gaza to see it for themselves, to try and combat and push back some of this, what people are calling Hamas propaganda, they would be in a different situation today. Why wouldn't they do that?
I'm sure some of it has been Hamas propaganda and images being faked, and we're being asked to rely on the so-called Hamas Health Ministry, which is an arm of a prescribed terrorist organisation for facts. But I concede your point on two fronts. I concede your point about awful suffering in Gaza, who can deny that? And I concede your point about Israel denying access for international journalists. I thought that was a very bad decision. But ultimately, we're being asked to accept that our government is going to virtue signal by saying you are a state when palpably that's not true. Right now, the organisation that would administer this state is prescribed by our own country. And our Prime Minister makes no effort to square this circle, to seek to explain why he wishes to hand statehood to an organisation of terrorists. And the reason he gets away with it is, one, he's not challenged on it enough, but two, because nothing will actually change. There won't be a state of Palestine anytime soon, despite the United Kingdom saying that there is. You've got to recognise reality rather than your own virtue signalling, and he doesn't want to.
I can tell you, it's really, you're mixed on this one at home because, as you say, Zoe, and I'm among them, I've said repeatedly, I cannot bear to see the images of these children. I can't bear it, as any rational human being would feel when you do see these images. It affects you in lots of ways. The counterpoint to that would be, there was that recent image that was on the front page of one of the newspapers here.
Cropped.
Yeah, many people have now got in touch and said, well, hold on a minute, Michelle, because I was one of the ones that have raised this and been upset about that. People are saying, well, hold on, that was a child with a medical condition. The mother, she wasn't starving, and the other family members that were in the picture that have been cut out, they also were not starving. So there's a lot of pushback on some of this stuff, saying it needs more investigative journalism going into it. But again, that's very hard when Israel won't actually let anyone in to actually independently do that. But wherever you stand on this, wherever you're wanting to draw the line and to pick bits off pictures and all the rest of it, there will undeniably be children suffering, and there have been now for a long time. On the flip side, there will also be families deeply, deeply suffering with the likes of the hostages not being returned. This is a very emotional subject for many of you at home. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. I'll bring you in after the break. Also, tonight, I want to talk about Southport 1 year on, and I want to ask you, if you reject the online safety bill, are you basically on the side of paedophiles? You heard that right. That was a suggestion from a Cabinet Minister. We'll discuss after the break.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Sally first. How can this be good?
I'm not sure if it's good, but I wouldn't say it's bad. I would defend everyone's choice to, if they can afford it, send their child to whatever care facility that they choose. And I think when you're talking about very young preschool children, there's an awful lot of life ahead of them where, you know, they can learn the that life isn't always going to shower you with rose petals and tasting menus. If it suits the parents, if it suits the child, why not? And we are talking about a very small sector of society who, A, can afford this sort of option with your preschool childcare, and it's for a very short time. So there's obviously a market for it. They've come all the way over from Singapore to set this up. It's their first outpost in the UK. So, yeah, good luck. If there's a gap in the market, fill it.
I know I'm a mother of 4 and I've got my own business, and even when we sit down for tea at night, I'm still on my phone, I'm still emailing. So for me, it's kind of like, I'm wondering if these parents are working 24/7 and they're trying to offset the guilt because they're really time poor with the kids. I mean, I've got 4 boys and I do think I naturally pamper them because I don't know about you, Stephen, but when I was growing up, I was constantly told I didn't even know I was born, whatever that means. And so it's like, I think each generation we pamper our kids even more, you know?
But Davinia, when you're sitting down with your kids having dinner, are you giving them a crisp golden Spanaker pita with refreshing tzatziki, followed by smoky jambalaya studded with free-range chicken and prawns? Or are they getting beans on toast?
Funnily enough, Stephen, that's a no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays, I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Alongside me, Alex Dean and Zoe Grunwald. Lots of reaction, as you would imagine, to that fair story about Israel and Gaza. Cynthia says, for goodness sakes, wake up, everybody. The problem in Gaza is Hamas, not Israel. Why don't people see this? Sandra says, Michelle, this is Keir Starmer sitting on the fence. Brian says, Starmer has been busy securing his Gaza votes. This is all because he's trying to not lose support to Jeremy Corbyn. Someone else says, Sir Keir Starmer basically recognises a Palestinian state and rewards Hamas whilst blaming Israel for absolutely everything. There's a big sentiment coming through that Hamas, whilst Hamas have control like this, it is the wrong time. That is the nuts and bolts. But also lots of you saying, yes, these people do deserve their own state and so on. Keep those thoughts coming in. But for now, the online safety bill, we discussed this at length. Well, now the Tech Secretary, Peter Kyle, he's made some extraordinary claims. Take a listen.
There is no definitive grey area about this. Either you're on the side of predators and paedophiles, as Nigel Farage is, because he wants them to have more access to our children online, than you are with the Labour Party, where we are making sure we are holding the tech companies to account to prevent that kind of access, to keep children safer.
Well, that was Peter Carr responding in an interview to us when he'd previously been saying that Nigel Farage is essentially on the same side of the likes of Jimmy Savile. I mean, well,
yeah,
what do you think?
It's deeply irresponsible political rhetoric, and it's the kind of thing you say to one another when you're getting pumped up and ready to go in to have the debate, but don't actually say out loud, don't say to a camera. It's a smear that once you've made it, you can't, it's very hard to take back. I see Number 10 has backed it today, but I think they're going to have to unwind that position. When you say these things about your opponents, when you portray them as being in favour of the worst extreme that you can imagine on the other side of the debate, that smear means you don't have to debate anymore the issue. You just portray them as bad, and you don't engage in the conversation and seek to show why, in your view, they are wrong. The trouble for the government is it doesn't work anymore. People cry wolf too much. Everyone's far right, then nobody's far right. If you call everyone in favour of paedophiles that questions you on a policy, then in the end people just ignore that kind of rhetoric. So I think they've made a mistake, and I think it's corrosive for public discourse to go about calling people in favour of Jimmy Savile if they disagree with you anyway. But I also just want to point something out. There is a peculiar contradiction here that is entirely of the government's own making. If you're mature enough to vote at 16, which is what this government wants, then why do you need to be in a digital kindergarten until you're 18, right? That is completely... They're both bills, they're both the government's. Why have they done that then?
Well, $1 million question. Nigel Farage, he went online today, issued a response. It's Peter Kyle. Take a watch.
Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. To compare anybody's actions with the vow Jimmy Savile is completely below the belt. Yes, there's to and fro in politics. This was appalling. All I asked for was an apology, and he simply doubled down. This is legislation that we're told is designed to protect children, but it doesn't, because they're tech savvy and they go onto VPNs, and some of these sites have had increases of thousands of % in the last 3 days alone. And if it's here to protect children, why, under this act, is a crack police unit being set up to monitor what people say about illegal immigration and asylum hotels?
Zoe, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'm, loath to defend Nigel Farage, but I do think that was a very misguided comparison by Peter Kyle. I am sick of politicians using child sex abuse as a political football, and I think when you throw out Jimmy Savile like that, you are losing the argument. You can defend a robust policy position without having to do that, and that was exactly the sort of thing that the government, previously when they were in opposition, used to have a go at Boris Johnson for doing when he tried to link Keir Starmer with Jimmy Savile. So, there's no need to play dirty on this. If the government truly believe in their legislation, they can defend it without talking about that. And by doing that, you minimise really what happened to victims. So I really don't like that, and I don't defend that. Having said that, I do think the Online Safety Act has a crucial role to play. The problem with this bit of legislation always is that we just don't know how it is going to happen in practice, because once again, this technology is, this is happening almost 10 years later than it should. Things move so quickly that the regulation can barely keep up. But it is vital that we keep children safe online. We have seen the damage it can do. You look at what happened to Molly Russell and her father, who is obviously a campaigner for this. It can be deadly if not properly regulated. So I do think it is important that the Online Safety Act has provisions to protect children, but I think the government should be able to defend their policy position here without evoking Jimmy Savile.
Let's illustrate how absurd what Peter Kyle said is. Earlier this year, the government 3-line whipped to oppose a national inquiry on child grooming gangs, right? I happen to think that was a mistaken policy, and if you're interested, I can explain why. But neither I nor anyone else went around saying they are in favour of child grooming then. If you oppose the inquiry, you must be in favour of child grooming. That's an infantile approach to politics, and it really does harm on our public discourse when people go around saying that sort of thing. I really hope that he goes to bed tonight, thinks, you know what, I got that wrong, and tries to find a way to unpick it. Because it's unworthy of him as in the government.
But he's doubling down on it, so clearly he's not reflecting on that. But one of the things that, because this isn't just about children, if you watched the debate last night on Dewbs and Co between Barry Gardner and Layla Cunningham, you will have seen actually that Barry did concede, which is what everyone already knew anyway, that this isn't just about children. It, of course, expands to adults. Many people that were trying to watch footage of the protests unfolding at the weekend, they had to verify their age and so on. But one of the things that never fails to kind of escape me on these conversations, if you want to keep children safe, the purest and easiest way to do it is not give them access to smartphones, the internet and social media. Why is that so hard for parents?
One, that is completely true. But two, these things are often Trojan horses for state control more broadly. Once you've got the database, let's have a look at what else we can do with it. You justify, we're just looking after the children. Now, suddenly we're investigating you for something else. We've got all this useful data.
Very quick thought from you on this. Just keep kids off these things.
Well, I kind of don't disagree on social media. I think there should be an age limit. I don't think that kids necessarily younger than 14 should be on social media. I don't see why. I think it's very difficult to say that kids don't need phones these days, because that is the connected world we're in. Well, I mean, I think, you can have apps that are made for children and, they can be designed in that way. But really what we should be looking at is tech companies, because why do billionaire tech companies, billionaire tech CEOs think that they don't have an obligation information to keep people safe when newspaper proprietors and TV proprietors do.
Well, what do you think to it all? And do you give your children smartphones? My niece has got one. She's 11 years old. She's not even 12. No offence to my sister, but as I've told my sister repeatedly, I think it's absolutely insane. My sister's response is, they've all got them. That's what she says. You can't make a difference. I would. Anyway, lots to discuss after the break. Southport, 1 year on. Have we learned lessons? And are our children actually more safe in society or less? I'll see you in a few.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We've got some severe thunderstorms on the way across many parts of Italy and the Balkans on Monday and Tuesday. But the good news is the extreme heat across Greece and Turkey is slowly easing, though there are unfortunately still a few wildfires around in places. Those showers also across parts of Italy, maybe the Pyrenees as well. But most of Iberia dry, sunny and settled, as indeed it will be across parts of Madeira and the Canary Islands. Lots of sunshine on the way and very warm, if not hot, over the next few days.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now we are going to see some further showers as we go through the rest of today, tonight and into tomorrow, but there will also be a lot of dry weather around. We still have high pressure staying to the southwest of us, and it's this that's partly leading to the largely fine weather, but also we're kind of in between frontal systems moving through. So although there are still some showery bursts across central southern parts of England in particular as we go through tonight, many places will have some dry weather and some clear skies too. Where we see those clear skies, particularly towards the west but also the east, we could see a few pockets of mist and fog developing, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. It is going to be a relatively warm night for most of us. Then taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, and quite cloudy across many parts of Scotland, a few showery bursts, nothing particularly heavy, and there will be some brighter breaks, particularly towards the Western Isles and maybe some parts towards eastern Scotland too. Across Northern Ireland, it's looking bright to start, but there is some clouds, some rain waiting to push in from the west. And then across much of England and Wales, a pretty mixed picture. Some showery bursts here and there, but also some brighter sunny weather, particularly towards the southwest, and also parts of East Anglia and Lincolnshire should have some decent sunshine first thing. Then as we go through the day, further showery spells of rain, particularly across eastern parts. Here they could turn a little bit heavier across parts of eastern England in particular. A slice of sunshine for some western areas, and in that sunshine feeling pretty warm with temperatures peaking in the low to mid 20s for quite a few of us, but some cloudier, wetter weather coming in from the west later on. Then looking ahead to Thursday, and a swathe of fairly hefty showery rain looks set to push its way eastwards across southern parts, and this could bring some thunder, could bring some heavy downpours, perhaps could cause some problems. A few showers likely further north. A few showers still possible on Friday, but by the weekend, by Saturday, it's looking drier for many of us. See you later.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The M4 westbound is closed between junctions 41 and 43 due to maintenance with diversions. The M62 eastbound between junctions 6 and 7 near St Helens faces a 15-minute delay due to an overturned vehicle. The A14 eastbound has 10-minute delays between the M1 Catthorpe interchange and junction 1 at Welford due to congestion. In Surrey, the A3 northbound has a lane blocked by a broken-down vehicle between the A333 and A283 Milford. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast services face disruptions between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you till 7. Alex Dean, the political consultant, and Zoe Grunwald, the journalist and broadcaster, alongside me. Oh, I've upset lots of you at home with my little rant about why parents are giving these young children smartphones. Tony in Dorset says, great, Michelle. How are you going to stop your child looking at their classmates' phones then? Anne, she says, Michelle, my daughter is fighting at the moment, giving her children iPhones and and iPads, but when they go to school, they get them provided there anyway. And what I would say to that is, at the end of the day, you can't be everywhere all of the time. And if you're at school and you're doing educational stuff within a supervised educational setting, then sure, use modern technology. What I'm talking about is parents that let their children go upstairs, sit on the phone, all the rest of it. And by the way, as parents, we do just want a breather every now and again. I get it, but we do actually have to keep our children safe. And I'm going to apologise if it upsets some of you, but cold hard truths sometimes do.
Children make bad decisions. That's why we don't let them decide their own bedtimes, let alone vote. But there is something very addictive about mobile phone technology,
Yes,
and it
a lot
applies
more reason
especially
to
to
keep them
children
away
who
from
are bad decision makers. Why you don't let them decide their own food intake. You need to try and ensure that they eat and drink the right things. Now, I'm lucky. My son is young enough that he's not at that stage yet, but you can already see at 18 months that he's keen to get hold of a device and swipe and so forth. Now, if that's the case at 18 months, I dread to think what it's like in a few years. Because this technology is getting more and more addictive as well. It's not static.
And Zoe said to me in the break, yes, but you wouldn't want to be the parent that makes your child different to all of the other children. And my response to that was, yes, I would. Thank you very much. I don't envy my son, I have to say. Peter says, Michelle, it's parents to keep their children safe. It's not the government, but lots of you are actually on the side of saying, Michelle, we do need to do more. We do need to protect technology. And I've got to tell you as well, coming back to that first conversation about Israel and Gaza, there are so many people raising that concern about the fact that it's Hamas that is still in power over there. So how on earth does that even work? And of course, many of you are suggesting and shouting, I would argue, what about the hostages? What is happening to them? Anyway, look, today marks 1 year. I cannot believe that this has passed so quickly. I will never, ever, ever forget that day. And I'm sure many of you weren't either. I'm talking, of course, about the horrendous situation in Southport, the awful murders of BB King, Elsie Dotz-Dancombe and Alice Aguirre. Now, we all saw, I mean, look at them, beautiful little girls, and I've been listening to the tributes as well that the parents have paid to their children. You can't even imagine, how would you ever get over something like this? But we're 1 year on. Yeah. We've had very long sentiment from Keir Starmer expressed on Twitter, basically going how we all stand side by side, and you know, we've shown Britain the meaning of community. He says, where are we 1 year on?
Well, we've learned some things and we haven't. I think the police learned how badly they handled things in the aftermath. I'm not talking about the investigation, and I'm sure the officers doing that did their utmost best. And I know from what victims' families have said, they felt comforted by the officers and so forth. I don't mean that. I mean in the public space. I think it's unambiguous and pretty unarguable that the police made a terrible hash, and government made a terrible hash of the discussion about what had happened at Southport in the hours and days after it happened. But, of course, recently in Liverpool, a man drove into a crowd and the police were very quick to let us know that it was a white man. And therefore, unlike in the Ruda Cabana case, so many will suspect it was because he was white that they were very keen to tell us very quickly in Liverpool that it wasn't down to an Islamic terrorist or someone like that. Once you've established a precedent, does that mean you're going to follow it? I rather suspect not, and that's what they haven't understood, I think. You can't, if you're defending someone or if you're advocating in a police interview, you can't give a partial no-comment interview. You can't say, I'm going to answer that question, then not answer that one. I'll answer that one, then I won't answer that one, because it makes it clear where you're unwilling to say things. And if you only tell us when it's white people who've been the perpetrators of an atrocity, then you'll make it very clear that we do indeed have two-tier policing and confirm the worst fears of many people in this country. But the demonstrations we've had outside of hotels recently by many reasonable people who just don't want to have large groups of almost entirely young men taking over hotels in their neighbourhoods have been portrayed by our government and by our establishment as being of the people of the far right. And the point is a bit like the discussion we were having before the break. They've cried wolf too much. It doesn't work anymore. So the lesson to learn... So we have learned some things. You know, they learned they got it wrong. They haven't learnt the lesson yet of how to get it right instead. And the first way to get it right is to stop dismissing everyone who's concerned about the way that things are as fascist or far right, and accept that many reasonable, moderate people, including many of your own voters, are deeply disturbed by the current state of society.
Yeah, but you say that, but still, to this day, You know, I always remember those scenes as well, you know, the riots after Southport that are absolutely horrendous, but I always remember seeing that group of people head to toe in black surging and instigating that aggression. Who were those people? You can see some of them in that clip, by the way. I'd love to see the answer to that question. But we still have, outside of those migrant hotels, we still have all those absolute pillocks that turn up with their stand up to racism, far right, not welcome. And they stand and they face the mothers and they face the fathers of communities that are terrified about the safety of their local children. And I think to myself, how dare you? How have you got the audacity to stand in front of those locals and tell them, essentially call them far right and all the rest? I think it's appalling. But anyway.
Well, I think what we're talking about here, and there was an interesting report that came out from the IPPR today, which was about how a year on, one thing the government hasn't really grasped and doesn't have a solid action plan for is to how to bring communities back together. And it talks a lot about how austerity and the impact of investment, you know, flowing from community spaces in certain areas has divided people, and it's meant that people are now at home on their computers. They walk their streets and they see that their high streets are deserted. They're not what they recognise. They see antisocial behaviour. They see their communities that they were proud of falling apart, and they feel angry and they feel lost. And they look at the government and they think you're not doing anything for us. And then when something like this happens, it's so easily a flashpoint for people's anger. And you know, Southport had this historic pier, and afterwards Southport was promised all this kind of investment, and you know, everybody was holding Southport in their hearts. A year on, Southport hasn't seen that investment. It hasn't seen the things that people wanted there, the community to come back together. You know, the pier was a symbol of that community where people could go and chat to each other and meet up and get ice cream and walk along the front. None of that has rematerialised.
Yes,
and the government has
those people in Southport, they were not on the streets because they didn't have a pier.
No,
they were on the streets because the son of migrants had gone out and butchered little girls.
Well, no, people originally took to the streets because of the disinformation that was spread online about the perpetrator's ethnicity. That was what, and his religion. That was why people were targeting mosques and things. That's why far-right agitators were able to stir up trouble online and spread misinformation. You know, the reason there was so much anger is because we have people who are devastated by what they see as communities falling apart, what they see as a government that no longer cares about them. And I think
I don't think it is that. I mean, I remember I'm from a working class area and loads of people had nothing. And the thing was, everyone was the same. Nobody had anything, actually. So you were all the same. You didn't
have... You had spaces where you could meet up and you could talk to people and you knew who was in your community. We don't have any of those anymore.
Yes, but the problem within communities now is you might not have your spaces and all the rest of it, but one of the core problems within communities now that's causing all of this friction and all the rest of it is that lots of people within the community still have nout, but they're taken, their nout is reduced even further to provide people that are illegal migrants with a better lifestyle than what these Brits have got.
That wasn't what the Southport riot was about. He wasn't an illegal migrant.
I'm not talking about Southport.
I'm talking about
now.
These issues that people are willing to believe and that far-right agitators can exploit because people are sat online. They're not out. They don't know their community, and people will spread misinformation and target people who are vulnerable, who have seen devastation in their community. It's a tinderbox.
Look, just to make a slightly different point, I think you were asking about what we've learned a year on, and people are very keen in the media to say these weren't local people causing these troubles. They came in and they exploited the situation. It's the far right, it's the far right, it's the far right. The same scrutiny, the same standard of observation is never applied to these so-called counter-protesters or renter-protesters who turn up from the left, provocateurs quite often, who say, you can't disagree with me, I'm standing up to racism. It says so on my badge. About the same level of political discourse as if you disagree with me, you're in favour of Jimmy Savile, who the police, these people who the police bus around. They are just as much to blame for confrontation in many of these scenarios, and it seems to me they may have been the provocateurs in Southport as well as more recently outside of the hotels.
One of the lessons that I've learned, and I know it's a lesson that you passionately disagree with me on, is that we should have the death penalty. People like this cowardly creature, I don't even like giving him his name, languishing now at taxpayers' expense, the guy that did this to those little girls, he's sat in a prison cell, I wouldn't mind, he's still continuing to attack people, allegedly. whilst in prison. Nobody will be able to convince me ever that guy should not have been issued with the death penalty in this country. Anyway, Alex passionately disagrees with me on that one. And many of you will disagree with me at home, but you know what? We can't all have common sense, can we? Anyway, look, after the break, let's talk about courts, shall we? We have a huge backlog in the criminal justice system. So why then are courts closing?
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Alongside me, I've got Alex Dean and Zoe Grunwald. Alex wants to challenge me on my point, what I just said.
Just felt you got a cheap shot in before the break about the fact that you're in favour of the death penalty, and then we went to the
privilege of having your own show.
Yeah, but look, I don't trust the state to give me a parking ticket. You know, we live in a country in which our most secure intelligence facility had a list of 20,000 people who had most reason in the world to fear the Taliban that got leaked to the Taliban. You know, you and Michelle are deeply suspicious of the power of the state, but you want to give the state the power to bump us off.
If you're an absolute wrong-un, like Axel Rudiker-Barner, who's already opted out of society by your own actions, and it's absolutely undeniable that it was you, then yes, I do. I'd be absolutely delighted if that guy had lost his life at the hands of the state.
What starts with one lynching...
I would have done it myself, actually.
I know you do it yourself. You've said that what starts with one lynching doesn't end with it. So let's take the case this year of Peter Sullivan, 38 years in prison, convicted murderer, convicted rapist, had an appeal, lost. You'd have strung him up, Michelle. On his renewed appeal, he won and was released, and he was vindicated.
Why?
Because of the new evidence emerged.
Exactly, because he actually...
But you'd have killed him before the new evidence came out, Michelle. You'd have strung him up, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't. I would only apply the death penalty to the likes of the people that killed Lee Rigby, so people saw it with their own eyes. It was undeniable. The guy stood there covered in Lee Rigby's blood.
Michelle,
Gone.
What you're talking about
Axel,
is cases where people
Rudakabana,
convict beyond reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard to which Peter Sullivan and many other people that subsequently turned out were innocent exist in this country. We don't have a beyond reasonable doubt. Okay? It's not like you're convicted, you're guilty beyond reasonable doubt, but maybe you didn't do it, so we just won't get the noose out for you then.
It wouldn't be beyond reasonable doubt. What it would be is when it is rock solid, nailed on, cast iron certain that you have done these things, and they are horrendous acts.
And when it turns out later you're wrong?
We're talking about... It's not going to turn out later that Axel scumbag Rudakabana did not butcher and try and behead little girls, is it?
Yes, and that's why hard cases make bad law. And when you think it's most undeniable, and this is the case that I get to show off about the most, you're not thinking about the cases that come after and the people that get executed by the state afterwards who were supposedly murderers and turns out aren't.
Yes, but those people, it wasn't rock solid, nailed on. They were not caught in the act. They were not witnessed by good only knows how many people.
There is no extra category in court law or law, Michelle, that says you're not just guilty beyond reasonable doubt, you're special Michelle Dewberry guilty. There is, I'm afraid, no such category.
I'm going to move to an island all on my own, common sense island.
Who would you kill then? You would have
I would look onwards with my mouth open at the ridiculousness of the UK. That's what I would do. Anyway, look, speaking about courts and the criminal justice system, the Crown Court backlog, we all know this, absolutely eye-watering numbers now. I would argue, actually, our whole criminal justice system is absolutely broken. I am joined now by Dr. Lawrence Newport. You are the founder of the Crush Crime campaign. One of the things that caught my eye about your campaign is that you are regularly asking questions. Why are courts closing on a daily basis? Tell us more.
Well, just as you raised, thank you for having me on the show, nearly 77,000 of our most serious criminal cases are in a backlog that grows by about 500 more cases a month. In practical terms, that means that a rape victim can expect to wait up to 4 years for a trial. At the same time, around about a third of our courts are shut on any given day. Up to a third of our courts are shut. It is honestly a complete disgrace and something that the government should put at the forefront of their programme of justice reform.
But why are they closed? What's going on?
Some of this, there's a mixture. They have had funding issues for years. There is now a shortage of judges, but it's also the case that judges themselves pick how many days a year they open. In essence, in a kind of confusing system, the government sets the number of overall days they could possibly open, but it's judges that choose whether or not they open individually. Quite simply, the way the government could get around this is actually choose when courts open, force them open themselves, hold Nightingale courts, and in fact, hold weekend courts for, like in the case of many American cities, weekend courts for quick trials, for trials that otherwise would unfortunately run for or wait 4 years that may only take a brief time otherwise to deal with.
Well, look, your campaign is on Twitter at Crush Crime. It's very interesting. I find on many days now you are highlighting the exact number. So on Friday, the 25th of July, 78 courtrooms were shut. It's absolutely astonishing. But just for time reasons, and I do apologise, Dr. Newport, I was ranting about the death penalty, so I've reduced the time that I've got left for this section. But for now, thank you very much. I urge everyone to take a look at your campaign. I want to bring you in, Alex, hence I've just cut that a bit short. Your thoughts?
He's absolutely right, and I haven't practiced at the bar for a while now, but you could see it beginning even then. The Conservative government was closing courts left, right and centre. Appalling thing to have done. Best justice is local justice, and we closed a whole series of local magistrates' courts, let alone Crown courts in the UK, which made it harder for people to give evidence. You might well be likely to give evidence once and commute 10 miles to a court centre, but if you're the person on the estate willing to tell the police what's happened, are you going to go 3-4 times a year? Absolutely not. So we've systematically let down victims and indeed wrongly accused people and rightly accused people who should be convicted swiftly or be sentenced if they pleaded guilty. We've got it completely wrong. And furthermore, we should have applied the logic we had in this country where we had Nightingale hospitals to Nightingale courts, whack up a whole series of prefabs and get cases through one after another until you've got through this backlog. Victims of very serious crimes are being let down in this country. It's not a party political point because all of the parties have been guilty of this. It was true of Labour before the coalition. It was true of the Conservatives and Lib Dems in coalition. It was true of the Conservatives on their own. And now it's true of the Labour Party on its own. And the worst thing about that is Keir Starmer, of all people, former Director of Public Prosecutions, should know better.
Sorry? I mean, Alex puts it all very well. The only thing I'd add is, of course, this isn't just criminal courts. I mean, if you look at, for example, the family court system and what that is doing to families, you know, people trying to get custody of their children, the way that, you know, the waits for people to just be able to divorce an abusive spouse, for example, can be horrendous. And people spend hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not sometimes running into the millions of their own money to just try and navigate the family court system. So across the board, it is all absolutely gummed up. And as Alex puts it, you know, it is victims, criminals and normal people. You never think you're going to have to interact with the court until you do, and then you can't access justice. And it's just another indictment of what is happening across across the country, all different industries. The courts are just another part of the system that is bunged up and not functioning correctly.
Yeah, I've got to say, though, if the government turned around to the judges and went, right, you're now working 7 days a week and all the rest of it, how do you think that would go down?
You don't have to do that. You can use judges who've been retired up to, say, 5 years. And best of all, you can use people from the legal profession who are what we call recorders, that is, properly qualified to sit as judges, done all the training, but they're practitioners. Day by day, they're in the court battling, but they're sometimes like part-time judges. You can use recorders to fill some of this gap. And you could also, by the way, of course, hire more full-time judges. But unbelievable, in a wonderful demonstration of how unjoined up government is, recorders across the country have received a letter saying don't sit more than the hours we've told you can sit, don't sit more days, then you'll be in real trouble if you try to sit more. We should be encouraging them to sit as often as possible until we get rid of this backlog.
Hear, hear to that. So I've got to tell you as well, I like you guys at home, not least because I'm looking at my inbox and so many of you are getting in touch, agreeing with me. You are dripping in common sense, ladies and gents, when it comes to death penalties for people like Axel Ruda Cabana. I cannot stand that man. So many of you have got in touch as well, sending your love to the families of those parents, not just of the children that were murdered, but also all of the other children and the adults that were injured. And I completely echo those sentiments, sending love to each and every single one of you. But for now, that's all I've got time for. Thanks, panel. Thanks to you at home. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now we are going to see some further showers as we go through the rest of today, tonight and into tomorrow, but there will also be a lot of dry weather around. We still have high pressure staying to the southwest of us, and it's this that's partly leading to the largely fine weather, but also we're kind of in between frontal systems moving through. So although there are still some showery bursts across central southern parts of England in particular as we go through tonight, many places will have some dry weather and some clear skies too. Where we see those clear skies, particularly towards the west but also the east, we could see a few pockets of mist and fog developing, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. It is going to be a relatively warm night for most of us. Then taking a closer look at first thing tomorrow morning, and quite cloudy across many parts of Scotland, a few showery bursts, nothing particularly heavy, and there will be some brighter breaks, particularly towards the Western Isles and maybe some parts towards eastern Scotland too. Across Northern Ireland, it's looking bright to start, but there is some cloud, some rain waiting to push in from the west. And then across much of England and Wales, a pretty mixed picture. Some showery bursts here and there, but also some brighter sunny weather, particularly towards the southwest, and also parts of East Anglia and Lincolnshire should have some decent sunshine first thing. Then as we go through the day, further showery spells of rain, particularly across eastern parts. Here they could turn a little bit heavy across parts of eastern England in particular. A slice of sunshine for some western areas, and in that sunshine feeling pretty warm with temperatures peaking in the low to mid-20s for quite a few of us, but some cloudier, wetter weather coming in from the west later on. Then looking ahead to Thursday, and a swathe of fairly hefty showery rain looks set to push its way eastwards across southern parts, and this could bring some thunder, could bring some heavy downpours, perhaps could cause some problems. A few showers likely further north. A few showers still possible on Friday, but by the weekend, by Saturday, it's looking drier for many of us. See you later.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M4 westbound between junctions 41 at Pentilla, Baglan and 43 at Landarcy, the road is closed for maintenance, with diversions in place. In Durham, a broken down vehicle on the A19 northbound between the A181 and A1086 at Easington has closed one lane. In Kent, an incident on the A2 westbound between the M2 and the A227 has closed 3 of 4 lanes. Expect delays. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast services are disrupted between Milton Keynes Central and Watford Junction. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's the final week to see how you can win big, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? The holiday of a lifetime? Or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? Lines close on the 1st of August, so make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus